Yes, good day, friends, comrades, community, family, wherever you are, and welcome to another special edition of the TIHA Archival Conversations, brought to you by Trans and Intersex History Africa, where we document, basically, we collect, we document, and we archive safely, digitally, the histories of trans and intersex Africans, the histories, the memories, the legacies of trans and intersex Africans, both on the continent and in the diaspora. And if you want to find or see more of the collections that we have so far, these very, very divine collections, please look us up on our website www.transandintersexhistory.africa. That is where you will find most of these collections digitally stored and made accessible by you. So these archival conversations happen every Friday around this time, and please follow our Facebook page, Trans and Intersex History Africa. Follow YouTube, Trans and Intersex History Africa, and you will be able to catch us every Friday with these very rich conversations. So today, we are deeply honored to sit with someone whose work, words, and walk have shaped the queer African movement in ways both bold and tender. Jabu Chen Pereira, affectionately known as Jabu, and we will be calling him Jabu. Jabu's story is one of fierce commitment to truth telling through images, archives, memory, and presence. From his early beginnings in South Africa in a place called Gqeberha, and I will ask Jabu when he comes on to pronounce that nicely for us, to founding Iranti, one of the continent's most impactful queer media and human rights organizations, to so many other work in the human rights world for African LGBT human rights movements. Jabu has remained rooted in community, justice, and radical visibility. So please help me welcome Jabu to the studio to have this conversation that I foresee as a powerful conversation with us. Studio, if you could bring Jabu on. Yay! Comrade, fam, friend, community. Welcome to
Hey,
Archival Conversations.
so good to be here. How are you,
Jabu, I'm
Richard?
so happy to see you. It's been years.
Yes, in person, but not virtually.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. That is the life we lead. That's the world we live in. I know we've met so many places in the past, in the corridors of activism, uh, or in South Africa, all the way to African Commission on Human and People's Rights, into the UN, to different places. And
Right.
I believe that your legacy is a very useful one to Africa today and in the future. So, most welcome to these archival conversations. So, Jabu, normally when people visit this studio, we ask a fun question, fun fact question. And today, yours, because many people know where South Africa is. Usually, we ask, where is your country located on the continent? So, we're going to take this opportunity to dive deeper. We hear that South Africa has so many official languages. Most of our African countries have one language, yet we speak so many languages in these African countries. How come South Africa has more than just one? How many? And are you able to name them?
Yeah, actually, we have 12 official languages, including
12.
sign
Wow.
language. So, which is amazing. And in fact, these languages have only been legally recognized since 1994,
Wow.
when South Africa became a democracy. In fact, the only two languages that were recognized when I was a child, um, up until 1994, was English and Afrikaans. And Afrikaans actually was an enforced language by the apartheid state, if you
Wow.
recall, in 1976. So in 1976, I was 5 years old, starting
Mm.
my school years, and we had to learn to speak Afrikaans, and this is what caused, more global awareness around state repression and apartheid across the world. Is when the June 16 uprisings happened, the student uprisings.
Mhm.
So yes, I think it's really incredible. Of course, as a older South African, I have unfortunately not had the opportunity to learn all languages,
Mhm.
so English and Afrikaans remains my, I guess, my predominant
Mhm.
languages in that way, as key communication languages. But yes, we have an incredible diversity of languages, and if you go to any respective of the 9 provinces of South Africa, you could either hear more than 3 languages,
Yeah.
you know, and the uniqueness of each of the indigenous languages according to which province you go to. So I really love the richness of South Africa in and the embodiment of that. At least now that we can celebrate that just over 30 years now. So I think that's been a huge accomplishment. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. So when I say Ngiyabonga, do so many
Mm,
Africans get me?
yes. Well,
Uh,
I hope so. Would be like a huge thank you, right? Yeah,
well,
bonga.
so
Thank you.
Ngiyabonga to you and Ngiyabonga
Yes.
for you showing up today. So
Yes.
today, since it is your moment, uh, taking us through your life, the parts that you're comfortable with us archiving for today and for the future. We will of course go back to time. You mentioned time in South Africa before 1970. I think you said before 1974. It means that you were here a little bit earlier than that. So we will go back there to where you come from, your childhood. You are a trans man, you are an activist, you are an archivist, you are so many things. Let us see where you come from
Hmm.
to where you are today. Where do you come from, Jabu? What happens when you're born?
Okay. So you already mentioned the renaming of the city I was born in, which
I
is
named the city called something,
Gqeberha.
but I'm
Yeah,
sorry about that.
it's Gqeberha,
Gqeberha.
and formerly known as Port Elizabeth, which of course was
Ah.
named after Queen Elizabeth. So the colonial history remained, but that was recently changed. And the province that I was born in is called the Eastern Cape, and the
Ah.
Eastern Cape is, of course, well known for many incredible prominent people such as Nelson Mandela,
Mhm.
Thabo Mbeki, um, Zakes Mda,
Mm.
an incredible array of artists, activists, scholars,
Yeah.
um, and queer activists that we know have come out of this province, and a very rich province that really built the liberation movement of South Africa, known as the African National Congress,
Mhm.
as well as the United Democratic Movement in the 1980s. So I come from this province that was really hammered by the apartheid state, and really struggled and still continues to struggle through a lot of, I guess, economic disadvantages,
Yeah.
largely due to the political uprisings and what one would consider kind of the disruptions of state under apartheid.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, and I was born, of course, as as trans people, we say we were assigned female at birth. So I
Yes.
would say I was assigned colored at birth, um, and that was my birth registration under apartheid. Is that South Africa still has these, not legally these categories, but they don't make any sense, which is
Mm-hmm.
categories such as colored, Indian, white,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
black, um, and then Chinese. And these categories could mean anybody. Anybody Asian could be considered Chinese. Anybody with a Malay, Indian descent would be considered Indian, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
Khalid is kind of not really. It's a category that really speaks mostly to people that were born in the Cape, and my birth certificate said Cape colored. Um, yeah. So yeah, and I was born just at the time when my grandparents, their homes were demolished by the apartheid state, and they were forcibly removed to a color designated township.
So you were born during a period of unrest.
Very much so. Yes,
Mhm.
absolute turmoil.
You
Yeah,
mentioned somewhere in your bio that you were born at the peak of
yep,
apartheid.
yep, yeah. And the stories that my grandmother speaks of is, my birth coincided with the displacement of their homes,
Yeah.
and having to resettle
So.
into a new township
Mhm.
community. My grandparents being, my parents being totally traumatized about, through this experience.
Yeah.
um and I mean, I have, of course, no memory of that moment, because
Right.
um but yeah, growing up in a singular racial community, going to a single race school, um having to be, to only be, so integration was never possible in South Africa in any particular way.
Right.
um or even the enjoyment of public space
Right.
was never something that I experienced as a young person. um
As a young
you know,
person, during that period,
yeah,
school, you mentioned school also, it is apartheid times, but you are a little boy born in a girl's body. Were you aware? At what point were you aware of this, and how was life like in your communities during that period of unrest, during the period of very, very deep racism?
mm. I must say, I don't know that I have a time frame on that.
Yeah.
I would say my greatest awareness about my gender identity,
Hmm.
in terms of its clear affirmation, was in
Hmm.
my adult it was in my adult existence.
Right.
I would say, likely as a child, the main preoccupations were about walking around seeing signages of
Yeah.
whites only signs everywhere, uh, not being able to enjoy a beach or a park, or even a walkway or a bench or a public toilet, because these were all assigned, or parks were assigned to white people. So
Hmm.
very early on in my life, I would say my body registered very clearly messages of exclusion.
Yes.
Very clearly, it read things that you were not allowed to enjoy or be or affirm. And the very beginnings of the lack of self esteem, or the very beginnings of the lack of confidence around assertions or claiming your space or claiming your bodily space,
Hmm.
was not possible.
Right.
Um, and the predominance of racial discrimination as well as gender discrimination in a female assigned body
Mm.
was immensely overwhelming.
Mm.
um, uh, Police brutality, police invasions in schools. um, the one would say that I would say that my first recollection of a memory of like a queer culture collection were people in my community, particularly feminine men, and the only language I knew in that time was gay, was the word gay.
Right. Right.
And the word
Mm.
gay, or in a discriminatory way, or in a way of a township language way, the word mofi
Murphy. Yeah.
was
Yeah.
used, right? And you're familiar with this word.
Yes.
And so I knew that this was a negative thing, because you would have cis masculine straight men using this word to attack feminine gay men in our
Mm.
within our
Mm.
townships.
Yes.
So I already knew that my body was further registering more wrongs.
Yeah.
So I would say, when you think about how do you enjoy yourself in your body as a black person, or as a queer person, and as a trans person, it's not something that the space creates. You're
Mm-hmm.
not born into that. It's not given to you. It's
Yeah.
given to white bodies and white people in a way
Yeah.
of dominance, but it's not given to you in
Right.
that way. And so the only way it's given to you is when you create it.
Yeah. You have to
And when
fight.
you create it through the connections of people who have similar experiences as
Mm-hmm.
you then create a set of language and community language that says, okay, this is who I am.
Right there.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And that, whether we call that now our activism, we call that our way of organizing,
I
but
like the way you describe it. I
but
like
you
the
have
way
to
you
construct
describe
it.
it. Like we don't get it automatically.
No, no,
We have to work
no.
for it so
Yeah.
hard. And that brings us to your activism, Jabu, because from what you're saying, it's like the journey to your action. You have participated, contributed in the creation of these communities that are safe for people like you, or for people that you care about. It
Mm,
is very clear they were not given. But
no.
we are beginning to experience little pockets here and there.
Mm,
From your like from your story, your background,
mm,
how did that shape you into activism, and how do you begin that journey of working to change the situation and spaces?
mm.
Mm.
I think I have a big obsession with truth
Mhm.
and
Yes,
this
I've
idea
seen that
of,
also. Truth teller is how you
yes,
describe.
I love this idea. I love this word as well. I think
Mhm.
truth, and the other word I really love and that nurtures me, is around evidence. Truth and
Mhm.
evidence.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of the things that one has to argue about as a black trans, a black queer person, is
Mhm.
that you always have to substantiate your experience of violence or anything with evidence, because it's, you know you're not believed until there's evidence, right? You are not believed until there's some way of journeying a truth
Yes.
of that way. So I think, for me, I have like many questions, and I grew up with many questions I still don't have answers to, around my upbringing, my family, my life, my journeys. Yeah, I think those things really informed me around why I, for example, started an organization like Iranti, was around, and this very platform is about creating a narrative in order to archive. And we archive because we need to create a way of having a collective experience and memory of what has happened in our lives, so that somewhere this can stay, because why can we look at queer people from the 1800s and say, oh, here's a history of a white person from this period, or we are now celebrating Sylvia Rivera, Marsha
Right.
P. Johnson. We are celebrating these people, but we are these people in our own history of our own continents. We are only having histories from the past 20 years that
Right.
we are looking at, and
Mhm.
surely that can't be the case.
Of
And
course.
a lot of the trans histories have been written as gay and lesbian histories,
Yes.
and they've
Right.
been archived as gay and lesbian histories, and that erasure of trans identities have been happening through a lot of these kind of stories
Mm.
and existence. You can see that in a book like Defiant Desire, a very significant publication in South Africa. But some of those characters or people in those stories are trans people. They're not.
Mm.
They are written up as lesbian
Right.
identities, right? So I think my activism has thankfully became awakened much earlier through understanding what was happening in South Africa was
Mhm.
racial injustice and wrong, or what was happening in my body in
Mm.
many ways, and having to bring that into a collective space of creation.
Mhm.
So what do we do when these violations happen? We organize ourselves. We have to think about organization. We have to think about um, a resistance or change, or um, how do we want to form ourselves. And my first awakening of activism around sexual orientation and gender identity really came through the Coalition for Gay and Lesbian Equality in the early 1990s, with the
Mm.
lobbying on sexual orientation in the Constitution, And so at
Mhm.
the age of 23 was a whole new um, world of activists and people and queer communities that gave me the space to explore a life and an integrated life of Black queerness. Uh,
Mm.
yeah, and I think that for me was a very significant piece. I think the last 15 years, I would say, probably far greater, more significance around my gender identity. I
Yeah.
mean, there are people like you and so many other people that have years of transition ahead of me. And even though I'm older in age, I'm younger in transition, Um,
Mhm. I understand.
and I think that um, has been a great and immense journey with many many patient people supporting me
Mhm.
through this transition process, but also seeing the need to grow movements across the continent and the world has been an immense passion and commitment for me, to build movements,
Yes.
and
Yes.
to see them still existing in so many formations and leaders. Yeah, it's exciting. It's like we've never seen such a huge amount of trans movements, and we have seen now in our lifetime. I, I
That's
th-
right. We
don't you
should
think
all be
so?
proud
I
of
mean,
this.
if you think about
Yeah.
when you transitioned, when you were looking for a resource organization or where to go or information,
Yeah.
must have been such a little information.
It was difficult. It was so difficult. I remember that
Yeah.
my first ILGA conference, I left that place almost sick in my heart that I went to an ILGA conference, but I didn't even feel like I was fitting.
Mm.
Fitting there. It was like a fight for space or silence and hiding. They should not see me. They shouldn't
Yes.
see me. And today there's leadership within ILGA that is trans,
Yes.
and it's just so amazing what you're talking about right now. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And even seeing their ILGA, even though they retained the name, having renamed the organization to be
Correct.
trans and intersex inclusive, and it's
Yes.
trans led, you know,
Yeah.
led by a trans feminist. I think this is really so important.
Yeah.
Uh, um, and I am seeing that joy across,
That's right.
even though we are saying in this moment there are funding cuts and there are far
Hmm.
greater state repressive issues, the one thing that none of these states can take away is
Hmm.
our existence now.
Hmm.
We are everywhere. And
We are
um,
everywhere, and we're growing in terms of
yes,
visibility and
yes,
pride, because we are
yes.
very transome and very proud. Yeah, but still and thank you so much, Jabu. There's a piece that you're adding as you will bring more and more trans Africans, the puzzle is like a very big thing, and everybody's filling in a piece of the puzzle. Now we understand already that there are gender non-conforming people who were present in South Africa when the issue was about racism mostly, and now we're beginning to think, how did they even survive? But yes, I think that these are journeys that we need to look back on and see
Mm,
how we managed, because they're mirrored in what is happening in other African states right now, and it
mm,
would be very great for us to learn from South Africa, who was there first to and managed to start getting out of it slowly by slowly, how they've walked that journey. And those who are listening to us, these this is one of the other reasons we have these archives. Lucky
mm,
enough, in these archives, most people are still alive. Most people are still accessible for even deeper stories. Uh, and yes, so this is Jabu from South Africa, a trans man, activist, archivist, a media person, an expert, trains people in this kind of work, an advocate, and so many things as you hear while he speaks. Jabu, we would like to hear more about Iranti. I have heard about your inspiration from way back. I think from the Equality Project is what you
oh
mentioned.
yeah.
Yes, and now we see you in 2012, I believe,
Hmm.
starting an organization called Iranti. If you are
Hmm.
comfortable talking about that, first and foremost, what does Iranti mean, and what was the energy behind the formation of Iranti, given that there were already other organizations existent in South Africa?
Wow, it's that in itself is a whole memory project, and I'm happy to talk about it. 2012, I was really inspired by um, the need to kind of have an integration of stories and documentation
Mhm.
that included LBQ, trans, and intersex persons, because the movements were very segmented. You were
Right.
either in a lesbian organization or in an LGBTI organization or
Mhm.
in a trans organization and so forth.
Mhm.
Um, and there was I'm sure you would remember in 2012 and just around that period, um, there were a number of feminist movements that were also really grappling with this.
My brother, comrade Jabu, I don't remember. I was fleeing Africa.
but there was a
Remind
time
us.
where there was a real kind of a growing sentiment or exclusion of trans men, let's say trans men in particular, firstly from the lesbian movement, um, and there was kind of a way of separating out cisness and trans identities, and these were kind of growing issues that were not healthy for any movement.
Yes.
Um, it inspired me to start a movement that said we need a feminist framework that's trans, lesbian, intersex, inclusive. Um, that there are common struggles across these, and in each of these categories, none of us carry singular identities. And
Mhm.
so when I transitioned, I didn't want to be erased first and foremost as a feminist.
Yeah.
I wanted to assert my feminism
Yes.
with my transition, because the moment I transitioned, there was this assertion assigned to me about male privilege. There was this imposition of toxic masculinity imposed on me. Um, um, the moment I came out as trans, the instant it was like an instant sanction against me by cis feminists. I'm
Yes.
not saying all, but there was definitely a block.
I hear
And
you. And you speak
and
for many trans people, trans men.
yes, and I think it was instrumentalized in order to silence us and to exclude us out of the movement.
Hmm.
Um, our transitions posed a threat to the politic of feminism and to the stale status at which feminism was sitting at.
Yeah.
So, so there was that component that I felt there was something here that I needed to explore, because as a feminist, I was also finally accepting my transition, which I was pushing back and denying because I was a feminist. And
Right.
because I hated patriarchy so much, I ended up internalized and hating myself as a result. And I had to reconcile these things.
Yeah.
I had to reconcile my transition, my coming out, and at the age of 40, having to deal with becoming another person, becoming
Right.
another being. But becoming another being didn't mean I was erasing who I was.
Exactly.
So these things became very integral and fundamental to how do I embody feminism? How do I work at ending patriarchy? How
Hmm.
do I end toxic masculinity? And how do I transition in a way that's healthy? So I guess I was also in turmoil on all these things, which is partly why I delayed transitioning.
Yeah.
I had always known I was trans, but I was not going to take those next steps because I hated men so much. So, how do you hate something that you are becoming or that you are? And and so that was one part of the project of my battles, my internal battles.
Right.
And then the other part was just seeing the global north document Africa as poor and dead. We were either diseased, we were dead, we were impoverished. And these were global LGBTI organizations. I'm not
Right.
talking about some funny little
Mainstream
development
something.
organization, or, it was LGBTI organizations
Yeah.
profiteering off the lives of Black bodies and off the lives of African bodies, and using bodies to
Right.
fundraise money for their
Yes.
organizations. And this had to stop.
Right.
We had to find a way of saying, stop making a poster of this is Victor, Victor's from Uganda, help. You can help Victor by donating your dollars to this organization, blah, blah, blah. This
Yes.
was problematic and remains problematic as an ongoing fight around the colonial model of
Right.
political appropriation and the appropriation of Black bodies. So
Yes.
Iranti became, actually, I didn't think it would be an organization. It just was a project I wanted to start. And I was in Nigeria at the time on an artist residency. Um, and while I was there, I was fully inspired, and I was looking for a word that would mean memory. And I was in the Yoruba community, and they were like, well, Iranti means memory
In Yoruba.
in Yoruba, yes.
Wow.
And I was like, that's it. That's, I didn't want an organization that was just some acronym, um, or,
It's very significant,
very, very. And
very
I wanted
Afro.
to, yeah, and I wanted to kind of create this space around
Wow,
the narratives of Africa, right? Us as a continent.
wow,
And how do we transcend even all these colonial borders and boundaries and within our own continent? We have so many geographical blockages
right,
around language, etc., etc.
right.
So that was the beginnings of Iranti. And then it was like, okay, how, and I just, how do I started off with my own little camera and my laptop, and I just started doing stories, and from there, grew it. People were inspired from, there was Zikona, there was Ayanda. Oh,
Hmm.
there were so many people. There was Tumi, so many people right in the beginnings of Iranti that wanted to be trained on media documentation. Um, there's Google, um, Lebo. There's just many, many, many people in that very early phase of Iranti that came. People came in short periods or in longer periods, and just wanted to be part of this program or project. And that's how we really started. I mean, all of us are pretty much, the co-founders of this incredible organization, and it grew, and then there were greater demands on the organization. So we started off with story and documentation, as you know, that was the beginnings. But
Hmm.
there was a huge ask by communities to say, it's all good that you tell our stories, but we need to we want change.
Right.
uh, and in that moment, Iranti had to add an additional element to its work around advocacy and policy and legal
Right.
reform, which was great, because
Hmm.
it's true. It's like you can't document a trans woman who's being excluded from the university.
Hmm.
She sleeps under the library desk because the university doesn't have housing for
Hmm.
trans people, and then you leave the student in that situation. You
Right.
cannot do that.
You need to
So
use that
right. So
story to
all our
change.
documentation work had to be linked to redress,
Right.
to ensuring that justice is met. So
Right.
whether the person is alive or is sadly deceased as a result of a hate crime, we
Hmm.
began to take on these cases.
Hmm.
And and one of the incredible things that I feel about the work, and what I feel most proud about, I would say, is being with families of queer people who are deceased as a result of hate crimes,
Hmm.
and being with that family and community in that period of being able to restore a story of dignity of the person
Hmm.
who has gone, who has left. Because in a mainstream story, you're going to find a sensationalized story of
Yeah.
that person. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we were
Just for
able
the
to,
numbers.
yes, and we were able to do so much more, but also to think about these stories not in isolation, but to think about them as a space of collective healing, as a place, as a space of collective pain and trauma. And
Mm.
ultimately, this did lead to, for example, uh, hate crimes legislation that South Africa now has in place,
Hmm.
which was not there before.
Right.
The police had no way of documenting that somebody was killed because of their identity, of their gender identity, or their sexual orientation, because there
Hmm.
was no category like that in law.
Hmm.
And so through this series of work that we did, we started to accumulate so many stories that the state had to respond
Hmm.
to to amending the Criminal Procedure Act to ensure this category. So yeah, I think this has been incredibly amazing. And of course, as you know, in 2022, I had made the decision to step down
Yeah,
as
10 years later.
as founding director. I
Mhm.
thought the time was right. I thought the organization needed fresh leadership.
Wow.
Um,
That's wisdom.
yeah, and Iranti also has this beautiful space that we purchased, and it's a space that is really the embodiment of community. We've had some beautiful trance weddings there. We've had
Wow.
uh, beautiful festivals there. We've had celebrations. Um, and hopefully, when I go back to Johannesburg soon, I'll go and visit the space. But it's a beautiful, incredible space. Very committed people working there, an incredible board. Um, it's so good to see that organizations, even when they struggle through these transitions,
Yes.
they remain there because they know the purpose of why they exist. They
Yeah.
know why Iranti is there. Um, you know, and that's inevitable, as you know, with all organizations. It goes through its own transitions, its own rebirthing.
But
Um,
but the
particularly
vision is
founders.
still
And
kept.
founders are so problematic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Founders have big egos, and
I know
founders,
about that.
you know, and everybody, thinks, oh, what will happen after after you leave
But,
this organization,
but Jabu, it says a lot about you, about the
Yeah,
kind of leader that you are, that
yeah,
you look at a certain moment and say, it is time for me to go, recognizing that there's somebody who can push it forward.
yeah.
There's something that you have planted that can be watered. I think that says a lot about you as a leader, and also a very big lesson to many of us. When we own it, founders can be problematic. I believe so.
Yes.
Let me tell you a little story in your story.
Tell me.
One time, I realized that Smug had changed the logo that that held it for over 20 years. No, or I think over 15 years. And then all of a sudden, I see a different logo. I'm not in the business of Smug. I left Smug in 2007. They're doing well. They're saving lives. And you cannot believe how terrible I felt. It's like they had killed something, you know, they unalived something. Until I spoke to myself and said, wait a minute, they didn't wake up and just did this. Trust them, trust the
Mm, mm,
process.
mm,
Trust the process. And that is how I let go. And there's a very big reason, a good reason for which they did that,
mm,
for the community.
mm,
Says a lot about what you said earlier on, and I just want younger activists to hear it
mm,
very audibly out there. That I got to some point, and I felt this need for change in leadership, the
mm,
need for young blood, young brain power, and I think that is wisdom that we should
mm,
spread all over this continent.
mm, mm.
Yes, a big problem. So I'm very, very grateful for that piece in your story that you've given. So beyond Iranti, and Iranti is Iranti working in just South Africa, or have hands spread
I
elsewhere?
I think at the moment they are in search of a new executive director. The search continues. They've had a leadership. I think there's some changes. As far as I
Yes,
know, it still remains a regional organization.
yes,
It's in a big period of re-strategizing
yes,
and restructuring.
yeah,
So it would be good if you had them at another stage, just back on. But definitely, I think I love following Iranti because I can still see how much the media presence is there
yes,
and how documentation still remains alive and well. And in fact, um, a big piece of the work is also around archiving the last
yes,
10,
yes,
well, now it's more than 10 years of
yes,
work, and
yes,
what to do with such a big body of digital work
yeah,
that, yeah, um, it storage is very expensive. I think many organizations probably grapple with this.
Yeah.
What do you do with your archive? Where do you store it? But
Yeah.
also around in many countries around safety and security.
Hmm.
It's not a luxury to keep your records around as well. Um,
That's yeah.
where do you
Yeah.
store your records, so that your history is not erased,
Mhm.
these kinds of things, and I'm really glad to see that they're really active around the archiving project as well.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's great work, and I was able to look deeper into it. You see, now I have every time somebody talks about their work, their life, I fall in love with those stories. And right
Mm.
now, I'm in love with Iranti. The fact that Iranti is a Yoruba word, you know,
Yes.
a Yoruba word, like it's so Afro, the name of Iranti. And glad I asked that question. This is our Iranti. It
Mm.
makes us feel like it's
Mm.
our
Mm.
Iranti. And thank you so much for
Oh,
that.
that's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is our Iranti. Like we own it, man. You made it for us. We want to make use of that space. But I see that 10 years later you leave 2022. What happens after that? Because I know that you're still um, I've seen something about a resting
Yeah.
place for activists. I kind of feel so exhausted. What is this about?
Yeah, I must say, uh, over the last few years and with the support of friends, it's good when you turn 50 and it's COVID and you can't have a party,
Yeah,
and your friends, they gift you some money,
yeah.
which was really nice. And I bought some land in
Mhm.
right next to Lesotho, um, in a little town called Rosendal, and sent in the central of South Africa. And I went there and I started, with the high levels of stress at Iranti, I really started to dig deep into issues around trauma care and wellness, because a lot of us as activists bring our own journeys and our work into one space. There's an integration in that.
Mhm.
Unlike when you go work for Shell and you just do something at Shell or BP or wherever,
Yeah.
this is our lives and who we are in our communities.
Mhm.
And I had to do quite a lot of deep work around care and healing. I started to get very sick. I was battling with like inflammation. I
Yeah.
was really battling with burnout, high levels of depression, and fatigue, and I needed to really reroute myself. And rerouting myself took me to Rosendal, and it took me there to say, I really want to create a space, for activists like me who need rest, who need rejuvenation, who need a place of refuge to come
Mhm.
to. And I had started this project, with just planting trees, doing
Wow.
food growth, and now we are starting. It's largely self-funded as well. Hopefully that will change. I want to get a website up and all of that,
Right.
and get a public call for contributions. But the
Mhm.
idea is to create a public space for activists like me to come
Yeah.
to. um, on whichever scale it might be. It might be small, it might be big, but it would be a space that's available.
Wow.
Um, and it's called Nurture Retreat and Wellness Center.
Wow.
And some of my very good chosen family have worked with me on this. Particularly Zikona Kozo and Zetu Matabeni.
Oh,
Oh, there's so many people. Heidi Van Rooyen, B. Kaminga. Oh, so many people and so many international people as
yeah.
well, have been inspired by this project. And there are many of these projects going across the world now. I've seen, even in Zambia, I'm seeing a project, Kenya, all over, I'm seeing retreat spaces that
Yes.
people are starting to create,
That's
because we are
amazing.
recognizing something. We are recognizing that this work has to be rooted in our activism, and our activism also has to include rest.
Right.
It
Which
has
has
to,
been
it has
lacking.
to be an embodiment of both. And the pace at which trans activism has been going has been at an unhealthy pace,
Hmm.
because we are catching up. We are catching up.
In
Literally,
the race.
feel like somebody pressed the speed button on the treadmill and said go,
And we
and
are
every
panting
single,
now.
and there is no one trans activist that you can look at in this world who's having a chilled life.
Yeah,
No, there isn't such a, that doesn't exist.
that's right.
So I think there's a way that more than a decade longer we're going to struggle with an implosion of burnout. We already are.
We are.
We already are
Mhm,
dealing with fatigue,
mhm.
and with the ongoing attacks on by authoritarian states, etc., banging down on our movements.
Yes.
We are all on reserve energy,
Yeah. I'm so
and
glad you have that
we need
dream.
to replenish. We need to
Yes.
replenish. You know.
Yes.
So I needed to do that. So I've been doing that, and then on top of that, I've been learning to engage and work within the space of philanthropy,
Okay.
um, and seeing how important resourcing is. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we need money. We
Right.
need money to do the work. Without money,
Yes.
it's impossible to do the scale of work that we are requiring organizations to do.
Right.
So we need money to do that. Movements need money to be able to move change, to move policy. This is
Right.
not money for jobs.
Yes.
This is money for change, money for appreciating the work that activists are doing and
Mm-hmm.
paying people a wage that is on par with the work.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be exploitative. We need to communicate within
Mm-hmm.
philanthropy that activists shouldn't be exploited.
Right.
Stop with the small grants, you know,
Mm.
stop with the starvation models of giving people short-term short grants
Mm.
and
Mm.
then expect Africans to be appreciative of that little money.
Mm-hmm.
And while there's such inequalities in our movements, so we
Right.
need to have a lot of redress around that. And it's something that I'm passionate about and that I'm looking at because I've seen how money moves change
Mm-hmm.
and is impactful. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen that in the way I have fundraised at Iranti.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the opportunity to buy a space for the
For the
organization.
organization.
The
Yeah.
organization now has a home. Why should queer people not be afforded the dignity that we are fighting for?
Right.
We need that. So we need to stay alive and we need to stay healthy in our
Yeah.
movement, and so this is
That's
the next phase of work that I'm shaping up and looking at with, yeah, basically.
that's deep, Jabu, but also very hopeful. It brings a lot of hope. If not for us who are existing for the future, that we have a
Yeah,
healthier environment uh,
yeah,
for this movement.
right.
So it is very hopeful, and thank you so much for sharing about that. I can't wait for Rosendale. I can't wait. I pray that it's
Um,
lifetime. I pray that it's in my lifetime, but
yes,
even if it is
another.
not, it is something that will benefit our kind in
Right.
the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jabu, there's so many trans people and intersex people who tune into this show who are doing a lot of work, as you
Yeah.
mentioned out there, that could be listening in today or tomorrow. I would like you to address them very directly right now about what you feel your message to these communities is, given what is happening across Africa.
Mm.
And to tell you the truth, even trans and intersex people in the diaspora are going through it now, uh, especially where some of us are, where we don't want to mention even here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what is your message to trans people, all across the board, especially in Africa? We'll leave you on the screen just so that they can get that message very directly, whichever part of life you want to address.
Mm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care. Well, I guess my message is, well, what a significant day to have this conversation. It is also Nelson Mandela's birthday. today, somebody who has been a huge inspiration to me and my struggles for freedom. My message is to say that none of us are fighting these battles alone. We are here together. We are proud in these struggles together. May we continue to hold each other. May we continue to support each other. May we continue to trust one another as we collectively stand and fight these various injustices that we are experiencing. Be well and keep the fight alive. Thank you.
Well, Jabu, I wasn't sending you off, even if you made a very quick be well. But thank you so much for that message. It is a great way to end this conversation for now, Jabu,
Thank
because
you.
there is a lot of wisdom, of memory that you carry with you that is very, very, because, for example, I would like to unpack a lot about the apartheid period in South
Right.
Africa. And I know that one day we shall have queer people here to just have a conversation, recollection of things that happened. It's very important because it explains to us exactly where we're coming from. It explains, today I learned a very big thing from you just in the beginning of the conversation, where you had issues with identity, gender, and sexual, and yet it is the peak of apartheid. I'm only imagining how people like you, like me, like our siblings who were present during that period, like I had never asked myself this question.
Mm.
So these are very good conversations to have, and I thank you so much for
Thank you.
showing up, for your courage, Jabu, and clarity and commitment to preserving and protecting, our truths. Truth is that one word that I read about you online. Truth telling is one word that I have understood so well. The other thing that I have learned is that Iranti collects stories, listens, but it is not an issue of just collecting the story. Iranti is taking those stories and
Mm.
changing the situations, either
Mm.
for the people present or the people tomorrow. And I believe that that is a very good thing to learn, that our stories are not told in vain.
Yeah.
Uh, they are very powerful. So we really thank you for what you're doing, Jabu. These days, I honor elders because I feel that I'm an elder. And
Looks like we lost Victor for a moment.
Are we still? We're not. Oh, are we
We
still?
are still, I think maybe then we're going to ask studio to stop it because we were wrapping up, and we are not sure what happened there. Sometimes internet can be weird anywhere in the world, right? That proves to us internet is always weird. So
Well, excellent, and thank you for having me. And yeah,
thank you very much.